Hey, second grade, it's Miss Crawl here, and today we're going to be working on key details. We're going to be reading a story. I'm going to be finding the first detail. The second detail we're going to do together. And then that last detail, I'm going to challenge you to find. But before we get into all of our work, we need to go over a couple things before we get started. The first thing we need to do is remind ourselves, what is a detail? So a detail is a piece of information about something. It helps to describe or tell us about something. We also need to understand the difference between a detail and a key detail. So when we're reading a story, a fictional story, a key detail tells us more about the characters in the story, the events that are happening, or the setting. So that's the difference between a detail and a key detail when we're reading a fictional story. That key detail is going to give us important information about what is happening with the characters or in the story or for the setting. It's going to help us understand the story more and what is happening. So whenever you're reading a story, and if you want to know if it's a key detail or just a detail, you can ask yourself, does this detail help me understand or better know what is happening with the characters, the events in the story, or the setting? We're going to go ahead and jump into our story, but first thing I need you to do is find a piece of paper or something that you can write on along with something that you can write with. So if you need to, go ahead and hit pause and go and find that. And then once you have that, you can go ahead and unpause me and we'll get started. We are going to be reading Little Cat, but before we do that, I want you to take that piece of paper that you found and that writing utensil that you have and make 3 large boxes, large squares in the middle of your paper. And make them pretty big because we're going to be writing in them. We're going to be writing our key details in those boxes. Our goal is to find 3 key details from this story. So go ahead, pause me, and get those 3 boxes drawn in the middle of your paper. So we are going to go ahead and read the story. I'm going to read, and I want you to silently follow along as I read out loud. Little Cat went to the market. She got a big bag of food. Little Cat walked home, but the bag was too big. Frog helped Little Cat. Little Cat wanted to thank Frog. She made a pie. She gave Frog a big slice. So now that we read the story, our goal is to find 3 key details that happen in the story. So I'm going to look at the very beginning of our story and reread. Little Cat went to the market. She got a big bag of food. So the key detail in that beginning part is that Little Cat went to get food. That detail tells me more about the events, what is happening in the very beginning of my story. That's the important information that I need to know to understand what is happening. So I want you to go ahead and pause me and write Little Cat went to get food in that first box for our first key detail of this story. Now, together, we are going to look at the middle part of our story. Little Cat walked home, but the bag was too big. Frog helped Little Cat. So we need to decide what's the key detail in the middle part of our story. What's the detail that's going to tell us what is happening and give us more information about the characters, the setting, or the events? When I read that, the key detail in that section is that Frog helped Little Cat carry the food. That detail is important because little cat was not able to carry the food and Frog was able to jump in and help. That was a key detail that helps tells us more about the events and keep the story moving along. So go ahead and pause me and write that in your middle box for that second key detail of our story. Finally, we're going to look at the last part of our story. Let's reread. Little cat wanted to thank Frog. She made a pie. She gave Frog a big slice. So I want you to think about what was just read. What's the key detail in that last section of our story? What's an important detail that's going to answer a question about what's going on with our characters, events, or settings? I want you to pause me now and go ahead and write that last key detail in that third box that you drew. So that last key detail of our story is that little cat gave Frog a piece of pie. That detail tells us the last important event that is happening in our story. That's how our story ends, with Frog getting a piece of pie for helping little cat carry the groceries. That's our last key detail of the story. So if you had something similar to that or had that, awesome job. If not, go ahead and let's add this into that last detail. Little cat gave Frog a piece of pie. So whenever we're reading a story, and if we need to know if that's a key detail or not, you need to remember, does this detail tell me more about the characters, the setting, or the events of the story? If it doesn't answer that question, it's not a key detail, it's just a detail. It's just giving us more information. But if it's giving us important or key information about the story, characters, or events and setting, then we know that's a key detail in our story. Awesome job, second grade.